Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempest rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whatever may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. There we are. Hi, guys. That'll work. Good evening. Welcome to EE. We are beginning our replay of the uh, gospel meeting that Mount Morris had. This was taking our quarterly gospel edification meeting slot. And CJ was kind enough to grab the videos from this episode or this gospel meeting that they had with Dr. Yes, Dr. Bruce McLarty. Thank you, from Tennessee. And so we're going to pick up with night number 1, which was Friday night, and I believe it is seeking spiritual refreshment. Seeking spiritual refreshment for a weary soul. And so I will be here to chat about it. If you guys have any comments, it will be the first time I hear it. So won't you tune in, enjoy the spiritual sustenance, spiritual food, as we embark on this journey of finding spiritual refreshment for a weary soul. Take her away, Dr. Bruce.
First order of business is always to make sure tech is working. So are you hearing me through this? Is this working? Okay. I hate to get 5 minutes into something and people say, we still can't hear. So yes, I can tell that this is. Thank you so much for your hospitality this evening and your warm welcome as people came in tonight. You are all new to me. And I'm getting to know Jim and Tanya and their family and generations of their family. And good to be with Nick and enjoy lunch today. And I'm learning the rest of you. So it's good to be with you. As we get started this evening, 2 things I want to tell you just by way of continuing Jim's introduction and all. One is he said, students saying, Dr. McLarty's cool, Dr. McLarty's neat, whatever. When my daughters would hear that, they would say to my wife, Mom, what are they talking about? Dad is not cool. He has never been cool. He will never be cool. And we don't know what it is that we're hearing out there. The other thing is, I have a sister who lives in Columbus, Ohio. And my sister was telling me several years back, I was preaching at her home congregation, and we were on our way to church that Sunday morning.
This needs to be up just a little bit. Down. See if that works.
Okay. Is this better or worse? Worse. I can do something else. Can I stand behind this? Is that better? Huh? That would be better? This is better. Okay. Just pretend this is working well for me. So this is the V-neck on the sweater probably is my problem right here. My sister, I was telling you, in Columbus, Ohio, was telling me that she was driving me to their church one Sunday morning, and I was going to preach, and she was telling me about this lady in the congregation that was convinced that I was the grandest preacher she had ever heard. There was no better. And my sister's telling me this, and I'm wondering what's going on. But you're just the best preacher she's ever heard. And I thought, I've got to meet this very wise woman. And not really. But I wish my sister had stopped the story right there. What had happened was that my sister knew this woman well, and this woman had been through a very tough season in life. And she had struggled a great deal. And my sister as her friend said, well, I have a brother who at that time was preaching in Arkansas and said, I have a brother who's a preacher and I have some CDs of his sermons, and would you like for me to bring you some to listen to? And so this woman got the CDs and she listened to my sermons and all of that. And I wish my sister had stopped the story right there. But she went on and she told me that in this woman's struggles, one of her greatest struggles was with insomnia. This lady struggled to go to sleep at night until she got the CDs of my sermons. And I told my sister, I don't care that it happens. You didn't have to tell me that it happens. And so to this day, and we're talking like 6 years later or whatever, every night that lady goes to sleep listening to my sermons. So I always tell people when I'm new at a place and all, I say, you know, that you may not you may not know how to appreciate this, but if nothing else tonight, I can put you to sleep. And so we will consider that. Don't be embarrassed. I won't be offended. We'll just say it's a gift from God for all of us. So, but I am glad to be with you, and I'm thankful to be in this space with these people tonight. It encourages my soul to see you here, to hear you sing, to know of the presence of the people of God in this location. And I will go home greatly encouraged because I've worshiped with you and we've shared some time together. Tonight we want to begin our time together by talking about finding spiritual refreshment for a weary soul. Everybody knows what that feels like. Everybody can kind of do this when you mention something like that. I was asking some folks in a Bible study just a couple of weeks ago, I said, what's the difference in weary and tired? We all know both experiences, but what are they? And I think weary is something that a good nap won't take care of. Tired, maybe it will, but weary is something that hangs on and it continues to plague you, and it's something that can grind us down spiritually. I want to begin tonight, and we're going to deal with this subject tonight and tomorrow night. But I want to begin with an image. I want to give you an image that is so important in my life about tending the inner fire. When my wife and I were about 25 years old, we went with our 2 young daughters to Kenya in East Africa. And we were there as church planting missionaries. Now, we lived right on the equator. I mean, right on the equator. And when you say that to most Americans, they think hot, really, really hot. We lived right on the equator, but we lived at about 5,000 feet in elevation. And so when we left our driveway, if we went right, we would cross the equator. If we went left, we would cross the equator. We were sitting right on it. And so I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and summers in Memphis were just horrible. The asphalt melts. It's just insufferable. And so when we were in Kenya, we would get letters from people from our sponsoring church back in Memphis. And they would say, it is so hot here in Memphis. It is just miserable. And they'd talk about how many days over 100 and all of that. And then they would include the line, but I guess that's nothing compared to where you are. Because we lived on the equator. Now, what they didn't know is that we were wearing sweaters on the equator because we were at 5,000 feet in elevation. And in Kenya, in June and July, the prevailing winds from the Indian Ocean blow the clouds over, covers the sun, and so you would dress like this pretty much all through the day, even though you're sitting right on the equator. We lived in a small home that was built out of cinder blocks, had a tin roof on it, and it was one of my favorite places that we've ever lived. Our daughters were 4 months old and 2 years and 4 months old when we arrived in Kenya. So they were 4 or 5 months older than that when the first rainy season came. In the evenings, some of my favorite memories that I just carry in my heart, in the evenings the girls would play with their toys in front of a little fireplace, the only heat in the house, a little fireplace and a little living room. And so they would play there, and Ann would do a lot of cross stitch. She loved to cross stitch back in those days, and those things are hanging in our house to this day, in our 45th year of marriage. And so she would do that. I was big into reading Michener novels, and eating potato chips, and the crackle of the fire in the fireplace, and Ann happily doing her cross stitch and the children playing. It's just one of my favorite memory scenes and all in life. Then it came time for bed, and we would tuck the girls back in their bedroom, and we would go to bed. I would go and sort of bank the fire for the night, and we would go to sleep. We went to sleep in a cheery house. It felt warm, and it felt safe, and it just felt good. Somewhere around 2 o'clock in the morning, always about 2 o'clock, I would awaken hearing the girls being restless in their beds. And what had happened was the fire had gone out, and the house had gotten cold. And on a night like that, it would always seem like not only did it get cold, but it felt like it got dark, darker than it had been when we went to bed initially. And so I don't know what it is about men and fire, but I figured it was my job. So I got up, and I would go into the little living room, and I would take the poker, and I would poke around and looking for a live coal in the fireplace. And then I'd put some dry sticks on there and some bigger pieces of wood, and I would blow on it until it sort of crackled back to life. And I still remember, as a 25-year-old, just sitting there by that fire, letting it warm back up again so I could put that last stick of wood on the fire. And I just remember savoring that time and how good it felt. And the dampness went away. And the darkness, it wasn't so heavy. And the girls were no longer restless in their beds with the cold. Things were good again. I love that picture. I just carry it in my heart every day of my life. But more than that, I love the image of that for what goes on in our souls. Because that for me is the image, the inner fire. We all know what it's like when you begin the journey and when things are good and when there's no dampness and there's no cold and everything feels cheery inside of our soul. When we first become Christians and we are just delighted in the Lord and delighted that the Spirit of God is living within us and life is good. But somewhere along the journey, the same thing that happened to that fire in that fireplace in Kenya can happen in our souls. And the fire gets dim, and we feel cold and uncomfortable and weary, and it's not as joyous as it once was. And we realize there is a need to tend the inner fire. And that's what we're going to be talking about this evening, tending the inner fire. There's a book called High Call, High Privilege, written by Gail McDonald, and I'll quote her husband here in just a moment. But Gail McDonald had gone to a Christian school, and she's told about, in her book, told about how there was an old missionary that was just their hero. They thought the world of him. He had gone to that school, he knew the folks there, and he had been, for many, many decades over in Africa as a missionary. And she said he was coming to their chapel to speak. And they were just so excited about it. Sitting on the edge of their seats the day he spoke in chapel, and the old missionary said this to them. It wasn't a long speech, really very short, but his message was, young people, untended fires soon die and become just a pile of ashes. That fits with what I'm talking about God's presence. Untended fires soon die and become just a pile of ashes. Gordon MacDonald wrote a book called Renewing Your Spiritual Passion, and in it he describes what a lot of us experience somewhere along the way spiritually. He said it became an unpleasant journey when it should not have been. Other words that describe such a trip are sour or stale or bored or numb. We would never have admitted it, but we were tired of God, tired of faith, tired of faith's people. Now, how could a call to abundant living turn into such dullness of spirit? That we should tire of Him was not God's fault. Rather, this weariness calls into question a system of spirituality many of us have been taught. He is saying that we've not been challenged, oftentimes, to tend that inner fire. I want us to textually begin tonight in 2 Samuel chapter 11, verses 1 and 2. It's the story of David. And you and I know chapter 12 as the story where we're going to hear about the sin of David and Bathsheba, and about how he's going to commit adultery, and then when she becomes pregnant, he's going to have her husband killed, and he just makes a big mess of his life. And if you go to the beginning of chapter 11 in 2 Samuel, if you were diagramming the life of David, you would say up to this text, it's going like this way. After this text, it's going this way. Because his life pretty much falls apart at this point because of this chapter. But we're not going to talk about the specifics of the sin of David and Bathsheba and all of that. What I want us to see are those first two verses of chapter 11. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they ravaged the Ammonites, and they besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. Then it happened late one afternoon when David rose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house that he saw from the roof, and we'll just let the rest of the story go. But what I want you to see is a king walking aimlessly on a roof. I want you to see a king who is not the great soldier he once was. A king who doesn't have his passion for the things of God, but a king that is letting the fire that's in the fireplace, letting it die out and become just a pile of ashes. Remember, this is the David who teaches us to pray through the Psalms. This is the David that at times has had spiritual passion in his soul, so intense that he would say he could taste and he could feel the power and the love and the holiness of God. This is the David who would say, my soul pants for God like a thirsty deer. My soul pants for God. This is the David who would say, the Lord is, He's my shepherd, and I shall not want. He gives me everything. He's everything that I need. Isn't it a wonderful thing to have this kind of love and this kind of relationship with God? Isn't it wonderful to know that God cares about us and He provides for us and He protects us? And isn't God just wonderful? And psalm after psalm in the Old Testament will speak of how glorious God is and how thrilled David is to have this relationship with the Lord. Now, take that picture and those memories and those words and bring that back here to 2 Samuel chapter 11 and look at the bored king. It's time to go out and do battle for the people of God, but this time I'm just not feeling it. And so he sends the people out with Joab to take care of business. And what's he doing? He's loitering. He's just kicking around aimlessly on the roof of the palace, tending the inner fire. David, what's the state of your inner fire? David, in terms of a roaring flame or just a pile of ashes, where is your soul right now with God? David, what have you done lately to put fuel on that fire or to fan those flames? David, what do you believe is called for from you to keep this fire on the inside going? So David is a bored king whose soul is in tremendous peril because he's not taking care of the things that need to be taken care of. The Apostle Paul, using language that just reminds us of this idea and reminds us of Kenya and all of those things. The Apostle Paul, as he writes to Timothy in what probably is the last thing to ever come from the pen of the Apostle Paul. He's been on 3 missionary journeys. He's been through so much. He has laid it all on the line for the Lord. And now he is in Rome. He has been released, rearrested, and he's waiting now for what probably is going to be his death in Rome. And he writes to Timothy, who's left in Ephesus, Timothy, who is the man that Paul has put his confidence in, and he writes to Timothy about what comes next. And Paul and Timothy, neither one know. Paul is at the stage in life where he's been such a leader in the church, and he's not ready. He's not ready to turn things over to the next generation. He still wants to help. He still wants to encourage. He still wants to problem solve. He still wants to preach the gospel. He's got so much to do. And Timothy loves having an Apostle Paul because there isn't when the hard times come or the unanswerable questions are asked, he can always say, let me write a letter to Paul. Let's see what Paul thinks. Timothy is a great, great servant, but he is not yet the man that the churches are going to listen to and that Timothy is going to go to when he has problems that he can't deal with. And the Apostle Paul writes to Timothy, the last thing he probably ever wrote, a letter that I like to think of having tears on the parchment. Tears from the Apostle Paul because of his heart's breaking because he may never see Timothy again. And I like to think of it having the tears of Timothy on the parchment as he reads the words of the Apostle Paul. And he feels that the world is shifting and it's changing and he doesn't like it one bit. The Apostle Paul writes to him, to Timothy, my beloved child, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and of love and self-control. He in this text, he has talked about the faith that you have and the faith that came from your mother and your grandmother, and I know that it's in you right now. Timothy, I'm writing you, maybe writing you for the last time, maybe writing you and will never see you again. Timothy, I write you and I remind you to fan into flame, to tend that inner fire, to pay attention to your relationship with God. Don't numbly go through life and just sort of bounce from one experience to another, but with focus and with passion. Pursue God. Pursue God through your prayers and through your study. Pursue God so that you fan into flame this gift of God that He's given us. In the letter to the Hebrews, the Hebrew letter is, in maybe the best description of it, it was a really, really good sermon. The Hebrew letter is a great sermon to a weary church, a church that's in danger of walking away from what they have received, the gift they have received. It's a letter for a tired church. They have, he says, you have your arms and your legs are drooping. You look like an athlete who is at the very limit of their endurance. You've worked hard, you've gotten ready for this thing, but you are exhausted and you don't know if you can move on. And the Hebrew writer is writing about when this happens to us spiritually. Chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Therefore, we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. Again, this fits with all those other texts that we've looked at. Lest we drift away from it. It's not the idea of waking up one day and saying, you know, I think I'm going to lose my faith today. I think I'm going to do something to ruin my life today. I don't think anybody wakes up with that kind of thought in their mind. But I think even like a David, I think a lot of people do wake up and don't think about what they're going to do that day. And don't think about the inner fire and what needs to be done. And what happens, the Hebrew writer says, is it's not that something explodes, but it's that something drifts. And you know that when things drift, oftentimes we don't even know what's going on. And yet we look up and we're not in the place that we thought we were. In chapter 5, verses 11 and 12, he says something about, since you have grown dull of hearing. How many times you've been in a church building? How many sermons have you heard? How many times have you taken the Lord's Supper? How many songs have you sung in a place like this? All of those are good things. But sometimes we grow weary of all of that. And we don't appreciate the significance of what we've just done or what we've just had the opportunity to experience. And so we grow dull of hearing. The Hebrew writer goes on and speaks of the danger of this and how that we can just have our consciences seared and we can drift, we can turn away from God. And he's trying through the whole letter to wake us up to that danger. In chapter 10, verses 32 through 39, he says, do not throw away your confidence. Once again, nobody would say, I want to throw away my confidence. I'm tired of having confidence in the Lord. Nobody would do that. That would just be absolutely crazy. But we can ignore it, and we can become distracted, and we can become weary and be in danger of throwing away our confidence. And then finally in chapter 12, therefore, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees. Isn't that powerful language? He calls out what's going on with them. You have, spiritually speaking, you have drooping hands, and you need to lift them up. And you have weak knees that need to be strengthened. Well, what about Jesus and the inner fire? One writer has has said about Jesus and the inner fire that everybody wants to be like Jesus on game day. Everybody wants to be like Jesus when we read those stories in the Gospels, and he's ready and he is on fire and he's strong and he does the right thing. And he said, you know what we're like a lot? We're a lot like people who watch the Olympics and we think, I want to be that person. I don't want to get up at 5 in the morning. I don't want to run 10 miles every day. I don't want my muscles to ache like their muscles ache, but I want to be like that person. I want to be like that person on game day. I want to be an all-American football player, but I don't want to go through all of the suffering and all of the coaching and all of just the weariness that goes with that. And he said, it's sort of like that. We're like that with Jesus. We want to be like Jesus on game day, but we don't do the things Jesus did to be ready for game day. And one of the texts that I think is probably just one of the clearest this subject, in Mark chapter 1, picking up in verse 32, Mark records that evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons. And the whole city was gathered together at the door, and he healed many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. Now that's just a description of a day in the life of Jesus. And he is weary with taking care of sick and possessed people. The whole city gathered at the door, and he heals these people who are sick with various diseases and are demon possessed. In verse 35, and rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went away to a desolate place where he prayed. That's the training. That's the exercise. That's the being ready for game day. It is when you're facing that kind of energy loss and that kind of weariness that Jesus had. So how do you get ready? How do you restore yourself? He departed and went into a desolate place where he prayed, and Simon and those who were with him searched for him. And they found him and said to him, everyone is looking for you. These are people that they're on his side. But this is a great example of people who would love you to death, literally to death. And that what they're doing, Jesus, they're asking about you. You know, your ratings are going up. Your popularity's never been this high before. And Jesus, what he needed was what he demonstrated to them. I needed to be alone and to pray. And then I need to be on focus. I need to be totally dialed in to what the mission of God is in my life. That's where the passion came from. That's why when Jesus goes to the cross, he's ready to go to the cross. And that's why when life was threatening to crush him, he had the reserve. He had the energy, he had the focus to take care of what needed to be taken care of. Jesus tended the inner fire. When we were getting ready to go to Africa, we went to a seminar. My wife and I and 4 other couples that were on our team. We went to a seminar getting young teams ready to go together on the mission field. And so one day we did a thing, a little exercise in group dynamics where they handed each of us a piece of graph paper like this. And they said to us, now, I want each of you individually to go to a different part of this building where you can just be by yourself. And I want you to reflect on graphing your spiritual life, graphing your closeness to God, graphing the inner fire. When have you been most zealous for the Lord? When have you been numbed out? Or when have you been exhausted? And just go back and look over your life for maybe the last 10 or 20, or some of us could look back at the last 50 years of our lives and what our walk with God has felt like. And so we all graphed that out. And it was pretty sobering for all of us. We were all pretty young in our 20s, and when we got back together, we realized that life had, there was something in the teen years. A lot of times there was growth because there was a lot of passion maybe in a youth group, and so there was growth. And then we went to college, and because we'd gone to a place where we were taking Bible classes, and we were our zeal was going up, and so in college it was like this. And then all of us had decided, because of those things in our lives, we wanted to be missionaries, and we were going to go overseas and all of that. And so we went to graduate school. And in graduate school, I just remember after the first semester, I just felt my eyes were bleary from all the reading. And it was, we were reading Greek and Hebrew, and we were studying German theologians, and just the, and what we didn't know, what we had never talked about, was that all 5 of the guys who had gone to graduate school, we came out of college doing this, and in graduate school, we were either flat or we were on a decline in terms of spiritual vigor and passion and excited about the faith. And we're studying the Bible. We're reading scriptures. We're reading scriptures in the language of the Hebrews and the Greeks. And yet, all of us were feeling something of a sense of numbness. That was a great discussion for us to have then, to put those graphs on the table and to share with one another about what was happening to the inner fire in our lives. And the thing we had experienced and talked about and all of that, we came to some conclusions about it all. One was that it was influenced by, but it was not determined by, circumstances. There are exhausting seasons in life, but that's not always the explanation. And so it's not just, we just hit a hard time in life, or we were working way too many hours, or things like that. It's influenced by, that graph, our graph, is influenced by, but it's not determined by circumstances. The second thing is that it cannot be taken care of once and for all. We can't go to a gospel meeting that is so good that we don't have to think about it again for maybe another 5 or 6 years. It's very much like a fire. You can't put so much wood on the fire in the fireplace and have the fire so hot that you don't have to think about it 2 days later. Because what's going to happen to it? The fire's going to die out. And so what we're talking about is really a matter of not neglecting this as we go through life and giving it the time and the attention that it needs. It can't be taken care of once and for all. I remember in my own experience back in the teen years going to a great youth meeting, and you thought this was the end all of everything. This is great. And yet you realize that it can't be taken care of once and for all. Or we might go on a campaign, and I remember coming home so excited, and I remember how it felt to be depressed 2 days later and wondering, what in the world is this and where did this come from? Well, our walk with God is not something that we can focus on big time today and forget about tomorrow. Third thing on it is that age does not make this issue go away. Is this a challenge for teenagers? Yeah, it is. Is this a challenge for people in their 90s? Yeah, it is. And everybody in between? Yeah, it is. This is something that we don't outgrow the way that our untended fires can soon die and become just a pile of ashes. And finally, this kind of pulls it all together. Maybe it's more a matter of attention and neglect more than it is anything else. Do I continue in being with the church? Do I continue in reading the scriptures, the Word of God? Do I continue in making the decisions to be obedient day in and day out? Do I continue to commune with the Lord in prayer? All acts that are a part of tending that inner fire. My prayer for all of us tonight is that with David as our example, and with the Apostle Paul as our example, and as that young mission team filling out those graphs, charting our spirituality as an example, that all of us tonight will be challenged and asking, are we tending the inner fire or not? Because let me say it one last time, untended fires soon die and become just a pile of ashes. Tonight there may be some here who want to become Christians. You haven't done it yet. And it's the most thrilling, exciting, marvelous thing that can happen in your life. To come to Jesus and to say, I can't do this by myself. And my heart is now open to your love. And I turn away from sin and I turn to following you when you say, as Jesus did to so many, follow me. And I'm ready to turn and follow you and to be baptized into Christ tonight. To participate, I love that word, to participate in His death and His burial and His resurrection so that we might all rise to walk in newness of life. Or maybe this evening, you've been a Christian for 30 years. And maybe you have identified with what's been said tonight about the inner fire. I would encourage you to make a resolution, make a promise to God here in this place at this time. It may be that you want to do it before the church. It may be that you just want to where you stand, to resolve in your heart, Lord, wake me up. I've been in a stupor. I haven't been focused like I need to be. Lord, revive my spirit. Renew my zeal. It may be that you need to come before the brethren. I don't know this church yet and won't know you real deeply by the time I leave, but I like what I see. And I have full confidence that if you bring a burden before this church and you say, I've got a spiritual burden that's breaking my back and I can't carry it by myself, I need your help. I have every confidence in the world that these good people will join you in carrying that burden. I just feel that in my bones just from experiencing your warmth as I came in this evening. Tending the inner fire. Finding spiritual refreshment for a weary soul. I believe the Lord offers it freely and joyfully tonight. I believe that there's an answer for every single one of us. Whatever it is that you need to do, I believe the Lord and this church will meet you where you are. In whatever way each of us needs to respond to the Lord this evening, I pray that we will do so. And we'll encourage each other as we stand and sing.
Man, what a feast, amen. What a feast. I hope and pray that you guys have been edified by the lesson that Brother McLarty brought to us. This will be going on for the next few nights. Tomorrow night, CJ will be here to present lesson number 2, Oshea, on Friday night, and then we will pick up again Sunday and I believe into Monday as well, with the final 2 episodes. And so please continue to join us for the as we bring the remainder of this gospel meeting. And like he says, let's restore that fire, shall we? Because we want to make sure that we tend our spiritual fire. I'm mindful of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, where we are told not to quench the spirit. And I have long held the understanding that spirit is a fire. Our God is a consuming fire. Well, that zeal that we all have when we first become Christians, we need to make sure that we maintain that zeal, that fire for the Lord, as it were. We need to make sure that we don't quench that. And heaven forbid that we should ever put out the fire in our young siblings, and rather we should encourage it, feed it, and bring it into a full self-sustaining fire. So please join us as we continue our journey through these wonderful lessons. So if you have been edified, we hope to see you tomorrow. That way, whether we wake tomorrow to serve God here on this earth, or we wake tomorrow to serve God up there where we all long to be, hey, guess what? We will have been on fire for the Lord. And yes, Sister T, that was CJ's congregation, the Mount Morris congregation in Michigan. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Brother Sam. It is a trial there in the Philippines. But you know what? You can do it. And you can keep that fire. We all have that personal responsibility. So without any other thing than that, maintain that fire for the Lord. That way we can be there tomorrow. And God bless in your walk with him. I love you all. And good night.